The gravel crunched under the tires of my F-150 as I pulled into the ranch, the headlights cutting through the pre-dawn mist like twin sabers. I liked the silence of 5:00 a.m. It was the only time the world felt honest. My wife Vivian was already on the meditation deck I'd built over our private lake, her silhouette a study in perfect stillness against the charcoal sky. 3 months ago, this was the dream. 15 acres of Montana gold, a private lake, and a property line that sat exactly 50 yards outside the grasping reach of Maplewood Estates, a high-end development filled with people who traded their souls for manicured lawns. I'd checked the deed 3 times. My land was sovereign. No HOA, no aesthetic committees. Just me, Vivian, and my red truck. Or so I thought. The first sign of the rot was a silver Mercedes S-Class that looked entirely too clean for our dirt road. Out stepped Cordelia Whitmore. She was the kind of woman who wore a $3,000 power suit to a construction site just to make sure everyone knew she was the most expensive thing there. "Good morning, Thorne," she said, her smile as warm as a refrigerated scalpel. "I'm Cordelia, president of the Maplewood HOA. We're so glad to have neighbors who appreciate the land." I leaned against my truck, a subtle smirk playing on my lips. "Appreciate it every day, Cordelia. What can I do for you?" Her eyes didn't meet mine. They went straight to my F-150. "We've been discussing community standards. While you're technically outside our gates, your property is highly visible from our main entrance. This vehicle, it's a bit of an eyesore for our prospective buyers. It lacks the visual harmony we've worked so hard to cultivate." I took a slow sip of my coffee, letting the silence stretch just long enough to be uncomfortable. Visual harmony, that's a fancy way of saying you don't like my truck. Well, it's a good thing I'm not in your club, isn't it? The mask slipped for a fraction of a second. Her jaw tightened. "We're all neighbors here, Thorne. What affects one property value affects us all. It would be a shame if things became complicated." She left, and Vivian appeared at my side, her eyes tracking the Mercedes as it kicked up dust. 10 years as an FBI tactical analyst doesn't just leave you, it becomes your skeleton. "She's a predator," Vivian said softly. "She's probing for a soft spot. Don't give her one." The probes started the following week. First, it was the letters. Embossed gold stationery, written in the kind of dense legalese designed to make a layman's head spin. They claimed County Ordinance 7847.3b gave them the right to enforce aesthetic standards on any property within a 200-yard radius of their boundary. The fine, $500 a day. I tossed the letter onto the kitchen table. $500 a day for a truck parked on my own dirt. She's got balls, I'll give her that. "She's a lawyer, Thorne," Vivian said, her laptop open as she ran a deep background check. "Top 10% of her class, specialist in property litigation. She's won 23 out of 25 cases by burying people in fees until they settle or sell. She doesn't want your truck gone. She wants your 15 acres. If she can lien this property into a foreclosure, she can expand Maplewood and pocket a $5 million development fee." "So it's a land grab disguised as a parking ticket," I muttered. "How do we play it?" Vivian looked up, a cold, dangerous light in her eyes. "We stay calm. We let her think she's winning. Predators only get sloppy when they think the prey is trapped." The harassment escalated into psychological warfare. In town, our neighbors from Maplewood, people who used to wave, now turned their backs when I walked into the hardware store. I heard the whispers. "That's the guy driving down our property values. So selfish." It was a coordinated social hit, orchestrated by Cordelia to make us feel like pariahs. Then came the inspections. It was 6:45 a.m. The sun was a bruised purple on the horizon. I was on the porch, coffee in hand, when 4 dark SUVs rolled silently onto my property. No sirens, no markings. 4 men in tactical gear stepped out. They weren't wearing police uniforms, but they had HOA enforcement, patches and shiny badges that looked like they'd been ordered from a catalog. They moved with a synchronized military precision that was meant to intimidate. One man began photographing my truck. Another had the hood up, inspecting the engine block. The third was on a radio, target confirmed, asset location verified, proceeding with enforcement protocol. The leader, a man with a buzz cut and a sneer that said he enjoyed his job too much, stepped toward me. "Step back, sir. This vehicle is in violation of aesthetic standards. We are here to seize and impound under county ordinance." "You're on private property," I said, my voice low, steady and dangerously calm, "and you're not the police." "We are authorized agents of the Maplewood Enforcement Division," he barked, his hand resting on a holster. "Interference will result in an arrest for obstruction. Now, step away from the porch." I didn't move. I didn't even put down my coffee. I just looked at him with a tired sort of pity. "You guys really practiced this in the mirror, didn't you?" Behind me, the screen door creaked. Vivian stepped out. She wasn't wearing a tactical vest, just a bathrobe and a look of absolute lethal boredom. She didn't look like a threat. She looked like a woman who was about to explain a very simple concept to a very slow child. "Gentlemen," she said, "I'm going to need to see your federal commission cards, not those toy badges. I want the identification that gives you the right to brandish firearms on private land outside your jurisdiction." The leader scoffed. "Ma'am, go back inside. This is official business." "Is it?" Vivian stepped down the stairs, walking straight into their tactical formation. She didn't flinch. She catalogued their gear with a single sweep of her eyes. No body cams, no government plates on the SUVs, no marked warrants. "And you," she pointed to the leader, "your holster is a level II retention, but your finger is twitching. You're nervous. You're nervous because you know that if a real deputy pulls up right now, you're all going to jail for impersonating an officer and armed trespassing." The leader's face turned a deep, ugly red. He unholstered a taser. "I told you to step back." At that moment, a silver Mercedes pulled up behind the SUVs. Cordelia stepped out, looking like the victor of a war she hadn't finished fighting yet. "Thorn Vivian," she called out, her voice dripping with mock sympathy. "It didn't have to come to this. If you just complied, we wouldn't be forced to exercise the emergency seizure clause. But now, with the daily fines and the cost of this enforcement action, you're looking at a debt of nearly $50,000. I'm prepared to offer you a way out. Sell the land to the HOA at market value, and we'll drop the charges." I looked at the enforcers, then at Cordelia. I couldn't help it. I started to laugh. It wasn't a loud laugh, just a quiet, rhythmic chuckle that seemed to unnerve the men with the guns. "What's so funny?" Cordelia snapped. "The market value part," I said, wiping a tear from my eye. "You really think you're the smartest person in the room, don't you, Cordelia? You spent all that time researching property law, but you forgot one very important thing." "And what's that?" "I don't own this land," I said. The silence that followed was heavy. Cordelia frowned. "Don't be ridiculous. The deed is in your name." "No," Vivian chimed in, leaning against the porch railing. "The deed was in our name. We transferred it 48 hours ago. My husband forgot to tell you, we have a very interesting silent partner." As if on cue, the low rumble of a heavy engine echoed from the main road. But it wasn't one engine. It was dozens. A fleet of blacked-out Suburbans with government plates rounded the bend, followed by 2 local sheriff's cruisers and a very large, very official-looking truck. Cordelia's face went pale. The enforcement team shifted, their bravado evaporating as real sirens began to wail. A man in a crisp suit stepped out of the lead Suburban. He didn't have a toy badge, he had a federal ID. "I'm Special Agent Miller, Department of the Interior. Who's in charge of this circus?" Cordelia stepped forward, her voice trembling. "Agent, thank God you're here. These people are in violation of—" "Ma'am, shut up," Miller said, not even looking at her. He walked up to me and nodded. "Thorn, Vivian, sorry we're late. The paperwork for the easement took a little longer than expected." I smiled at Cordelia. "See, Cordelia, I knew you'd keep coming for the land, so I contacted an old friend of Vivian. Turns out, my 15 acres sits right on top of a migratory flight path and a protected watershed that connects to the national park 3 miles away. I didn't sell the land to you. I donated a conservation easement to the federal government." Vivian crossed her arms. "Which means this land is now technically under federal protection. And since you sent armed, private security to seize assets on federal interest land, well, that's not an HOA violation. That's a felony." The leader of the tactical team dropped his taser as if it had turned into a snake. The sheriff's deputies moved in, and for the first time in my life, I watched someone get handcuffed in high definition. Cordelia stood frozen. Her $3,000 suit looked like a costume now. You ruined the value of the entire area. You can't build on a conservation easement. You've turned your ranch into a swamp." "Actually," I said, taking a final, satisfying sip of my coffee, "I've turned it into a fortress. I get to live here for the rest of my life as a caretaker. No one can ever build here, no one can ever pave it, and most importantly, no one can ever tell me where to park my truck." As the sheriff led Cordelia toward a patrol car for questioning regarding racketeering and impersonation, I looked out at my lake. The sun was fully up now, reflecting off the water like a sheet of gold. The silence was back, and this time it was going to stay. I turned to Vivian. "You know, I think I might buy another truck, maybe a green one, just to see if she likes the visual harmony of that from her jail cell." Vivian smiled, a rare, genuine expression of pride. "Don't push it, Thorn. We've got a garden to plant." I watched the last of the SUVs being towed away by a real tow truck, not a fake one. The world was honest again.